Hello, I'm Kate from Aligned Natural Health, and today I'm going to talk with you about mold. What is mold? What is fungus and yeast? And where do you get it? How does this cause health problems? These are things that customer clients are often asking and questions that we deal with a lot of the times because mold is something that gets missed a lot. So when we talk about how do you get it, mold for a lot of people, asking, have you ever lived in a home where you knew that there was mold? Or have you ever been in a situation at work where you knew there was mold? Sometimes you can walk into a restaurant. I've had clients share that as well. You can walk in and you just don't feel good as soon as you walk in the restaurant. This could be a hotel as well. In the past, I used to travel a lot to places like Cuba and Dominican Republic, and they're beautiful tropical places, but they're very humid. And so if you're in a place that's very humid all the time, there's going to be moisture in the air, which is going to lead to moisture in the building, which could be in the carpets or under the flooring. It could be in the walls. It could be in all kinds of areas that we don't even think about. And anytime there's moisture in the air, mold is going to start to form. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So, how do you get mold? How do you come in contact with mold? As I said, it can be from your home or it can be from a workplace, but just more basic ways of looking at things. We can eat mold. And this is probably, some of these are not going to be that much of a surprise to people. I know for me, when I was growing up, my dad was very much I would come to him and say, like, there's mold on this bread. I can't eat it. And he'd be like, just cut it off. Just cut it off. You'll be fine. And, a lot of us have experienced that in the past as well. So you've probably seen mold on food in times in your life. And we often don't even really consider the impact that it could have if we do consume it. So, like I said, mold can be on cheese or bread, which very common. When I was a kid, you'd go in the fridge and there was mold on the cheese and mold on the bread all the time. And then, the parent's solution can be just cut it off and it'll be fine. But just because there's mold on the one slice and you get rid of it, or there's mold on the one bit of cheese and you get rid of it, if there's mold on one piece of bread, there's mold growing in all the bread. Just because you can't see it yet doesn't mean that it's not there. So, another one, some people are going to have a hard time with this one. One of my favorite uncles has done this with cheese. Yeah, I know. It's a big one. I don't know why it was a dad thing for me in the past for sure. Another area where mold can become a factor, and this one's going to be really hard to hear because even for me, I was like, no, meal prep. If you meal prep for the week, which is something that I used to do in the past as well. I thought meal prep was great. I could spend, an hour or a couple of hours on Sundays and I could prep all of my foods for the week. And then, I worked a really busy job. And so it was super easy to open the fridge and just like grab my Monday meal and off I went to work. And then I would do that until Friday. So throughout the whole week. But when you're mold prepping, that's what's happening. When you're meal prepping, as soon as you've prepped the food, it's going to start growing mold. So this doesn't mean that meal prepping is necessarily a bad thing, because when it comes to eating healthier, being able to make your own food is really beneficial. Then you know exactly what's in it, and then you're not worried about sugars or chemicals or, rancid oils or other things in there that aren't going to benefit you. But if you're prepping food, the best thing that you can do is prep it and freeze it right away. So put it right in the freezer. This is why it's going to be helpful to prep things that are freezable as well. You can't do this with salad. But yeah, prepping it and then freezing it is going to be one way you can make sure that you're not taking mold on your food to lunch. Because yes, it's prepped. Yes, it's easy, but mold is not going to be beneficial. Mold could be the reason if you're dealing with chronic symptoms. And this is something that is very often completely underappreciated and not even looked at. So things like chronic headaches can be linked to mold. Things like chronic sinus congestion can be a mold issue. Stomach issues can also be mold things. I mean, especially if you're food prepping and you're taking this food to work all week and you're consuming mold over and over and over again, this can make these symptoms worse, and it can make them really hard to even figure out what's the cause of them because a lot of people don't even look into these things. Mold is something that we test clients for all the time at Align Natural Health. We use quantum testing. So we test to find out what's the cause. Why are you dealing with the issues that you're dealing with? And mold is something we test for. We test for a bunch of other things as well, but it's just beneficial to know what's actually going on in your system because we can use a medication, we can use supplementation, we can give you, foods that should help with certain things, but if we're not figuring out the cause and dealing with that, we're never going to actually be able to help you get better. So that's where nutrition testing, in my opinion, is really beneficial. So, talking about foods when it comes to mold. So, what are the top foods that are high in mold? You're not going to like me for some of these. Lunch meats is a big one. Yes, there's preservatives. Yes, there's chemicals applied to them to help them last well, but they still are often high in mold because a lot of the times, you'll open the package and it will stay in the fridge for a really long time. Cheese, as I mentioned, cheese is a really big one. Cheese essentially it is mold. Cheese is mold grown on dairy. So cheese kind of starts as mold and then it just over time gets moldier along the process. And some people have a hard time with cheese, and this is part of the problem here. Berries. This one is heartbreaking, and this one I've definitely seen it. And for most people, if you've ever bought berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, you get them home from the store sometimes, and you open the package, and there's a moldy one in there. And my habit in the past is just like, we'll just throw out the moldy one. The rest are fine. Probably not. If there's mold on one of them, there's been mold growing in all the other ones. It just hasn't turned gray yet or hasn't turned black yet. So berries are a really big one for mold. Baked goods. So cookies, donuts, pastries, bread, as I said, mold will start to grow after it's been baked. And then this isn't something that you bake it and then you eat it right away. This sits somewhere for a week, maybe even a little bit more, and mold is growing in these things as they're sitting in your house and before you actually eat them. Dark beers is a really interesting one as well. Whiskey, these are ones that have mold growing in them. Peanut butter is one that a lot of people may not even think about, but if you think of peanut butter, they're not using the best peanuts to make the butter. And this is one that's going to have a fairly high mold content in it as well. Even, I mean, if it's organic is a good thing to go with, but ultimately there's moisture, and that's the biggest problem with peanuts. Processed meats, we want to stay away from processed meats because they're often going to have mold in them as well. Oh, got some comments here. Yeah, coffee that's not organic can contain mold. Yes, definitely true. I'm going to touch on that one in a second too. I mean, organic is always the best way to go, but ultimately, even if it's organic, these things can still grow mold. So we talked about processed meats. So orange juice is another one. This is a really sweet fruit, and mold can grow on that as well. Coffee, yes. If coffee's not organic, even organic coffee can grow mold. So you want to make sure that you're doing your best to get sources that are tested to make sure that mold is not an issue there. Dried fruits is a problem. And then again, what we talked about already was leftovers. So leftovers, prepped meals for the week, mold can be an issue with all of these. You could be drinking the mold. So we already talked about dark beers and whiskey. But water bottles is a really big one for this. I'm guilty of this for sure too. If you have a water bottle that you're constantly filling up every day, this is one of my bottles, you're filling it up every day, where does the mold get? It's in the lid. Moisture is in there all of the time. And if we're not continually cleaning it, this is where white vinegar is really beneficial. You don't want to be diluting it. You want to make sure that you're cleaning it frequently and you're allowing it to dry thoroughly because anywhere that there's moisture is where we're going to have mold building up. Pitchers can be another source for this as well. We can also breathe mold. So make sure make sure, please, that you use the fan in your bathroom. This is something I never considered in the past. When I was younger, I used to get in trouble for leaving the lights on. I'd get in trouble for leaving the bathroom fan on because it was using extra hydro. But ultimately, you think about it, you have a shower and the mirror fogs up. There's moisture. There's moisture in the air in the bathroom. This is why mold can start to form. Mold can form in the bath mat in the bathroom. Mold can form in the fan in the bathroom. Mold can form in all different areas, but being able to have the fan on is at least giving some ventilation to the room, so it's moving some of the moisture out of the air. When I was growing up, I used to live in my dad lived in a basement apartment, and he used to have a dehumidifier all the time. This is something else that's really beneficial. If you're really in a damp environment, a dehumidifier can help pull moisture out of the air. It was pretty crazy down there when I was a kid. Not only were we picking the moldy bread pieces off and cutting the mold off the cheese, that could have been the problem. This basement with this dehumidifier, there was like a big bucket. I can't totally show you a big bucket on the back of the dehumidifier, and we used to empty it multiple times a day. That's how much moisture was in this basement. Basement apartments can be a challenge for that for sure. Um, so yeah, after you shower, as I said, if the bathroom mirror fogs up, you are seeing evidence that there's moisture in the air. And anytime there's moisture, mold is going to grow and start forming. If you have ever lived in or if you've ever had a leaky basement in your house, there can be mold growing within the floor, within the walls. It can be growing underneath flooring in your house. It can be growing behind drywall. It can be growing in the ceiling. Mold can form pretty much anywhere. So it's good to make sure if there are leaks in your house, if there are leaks anywhere, you want to have someone come in and check your house and make sure that there isn't mold growing. And you also want to make sure you get this fixed as quickly as possible, because this is not going to be beneficial for your health. Another place that we can breathe in mold. This was one that was surprising to me because I didn't even think about it. And that's a lot of the times the problem is that there are things that are just such everyday parts of life that we don't even think about them. But that's where, if we're not paying attention and if we're not addressing these issues, they become issues, really big issues. And the one that I didn't even think about, I mean, it's not something that I personally use, but I work with clients all the time, is CPAP machines. And a lot of the times these can contain mold as well. They're not cleaned out all that often, which is a part of it, but they're very moist and damp. And so, mold can be forming in there, and then we're breathing it in. So this is a place where we can breathe in mold, which can be harmful. And you can touch mold. So one case with this that I've definitely experienced in the past, forgetting laundry in the washing machine. So you do laundry and then, you go to get groceries and then you run around doing things and then it's hours later and then you're like, "Oh no, I forgot there was laundry in the washing machine." Mold can be forming in your laundry while it's sitting in the washing machine. From another place for touching mold, if you're cleaning moldy areas in your home or in your workplace, we want to make sure, like really make sure that you wear gloves every single time. And this would be a really good time to use a mask as well, to wear a mask, because mold gets into the air and then we can breathe it in. My general recommendation when it comes to mold is stay away from it. But if you have to clean an area, make sure you mask up, make sure you glove up. You want to make sure you protect yourself from touching it or from breathing it in. And again, like I said, white vinegar can be a really good cleaning option here, but you want to make sure you don't dilute it when you use it at full strength. And you want to make sure you do everything to not disturb the spores. Because when the mold spores are disturbed, that's when they become airborne, and that's when they end up everywhere. And that's when we can breathe them in, which is problematic. So mold illness is missed as a cause of so many health problems. It's just something that's not often even considered. I've said a few times already, there are things that you just don't even think about. And so, if you go to the doctor and you're dealing with the sinus issues, or you're dealing with the stomach issues, or you're dealing with headaches, it's not common to think, well, I'm dealing with this because, my roof leaked yesterday or last week and it's been smelling like mold. It's just something that's not front of mind for people. It's not something we can think about often. But mold illness can cause a lot of problems. So mold can actually imbalance hormones, which is something that I didn't know until a few months ago that I found really interesting. You could be gaining weight because of the mold, because of the hormone imbalance. Mold will increase estrogen in the body, which is not a good thing. Estrogen increased in females and in males as well is going to cause issues. In women, it can be linked to bad things. So, excess estrogen can be linked to things like cancer. And then estrogen dominance is a problem that a lot of women deal with, where weight is a factor and other hormone imbalance symptoms are going to be a factor as well. This could be changes in your menstrual cycle. This could be worse PMS symptoms. This could be worse menopause symptoms. There's a lot of factors that come up that we don't even think about mold as being potentially a cause for, but it could be. And then when it's in males as well, increased estrogen can cause an increase in breast tissue, which is something that shouldn't be happening in males, but increased estrogen actually causes this quite frequently in males as well. And it could be linked to mold. Mold can also cause respiratory illness. So things like pneumonia, things like chronic asthma, chronic bronchitis. Maybe it's because it's really rainy where you live and there's lots of moisture, or maybe it always happens because it's the end of snow season in your area and suddenly you have bronchitis. And then over time, we can start to think like, okay, every spring I get bronchitis. That's just me. That's just how things are. But this could be the reason. Mold could be the reason behind this. And this is why it's really beneficial anytime you have symptoms, even if it's symptoms that you've had over and over for the last couple of years. It's really helpful to start asking why. Why am I having the symptoms that I'm having? And that's where quantum nutrition testing is so helpful because we can test your body. We can test all the organs and glands in your body to figure out where the weaknesses are and what the cause is. Why are you dealing with the things that you're dealing with? So that could be, it could be respiratory illnesses. It could be weight gain. It could be hormone symptoms. It could be anything. We can test and figure out why. Another area, mold removal is really tricky. So as I said, my first reaction is like, don't try and do it yourself unless you're really well experienced or really, really knowledgeable of how to do it properly. So if you suspect that there's mold in your house or you've been in a moldy environment, we can test you to figure out if it's actually disturbing you. We can test to see if there's an area in your house that's moldy. And then from there, you can find someone who really knows how to cut it up and how to cut it out and how to remediate your house properly. So if any of these symptoms resonated with you, if you've been dealing with anything that you can't seem to find the solution for, we can help you. That's where, we can test to figure out, is it mold that's the problem for you? Is it parasites? Is it radiation? Is it food? Is it something that you're eating that's making it so that you can't get better? Because once we figure out what the cause is, then we have a path to start working on to help you get better. If this is something that you're interested in, you can send me a message and we can talk about, what your next best steps are and how we can help you move forward. Or you can grab the link in the comments of this post and then we can go from there and help you move towards better health. Any questions, reach out anytime. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And oh, no, I should mention to you, it's January. So this is the new month, the first month of the new year. And we have a special this month as well. So we have a new client special. So if you are interested in figuring out what's going on with you and what's the cause of your symptoms, we have our new client special is currently on sale for $129. This includes your first 2 appointments and your first full round of quantum nutrition testing. So we'll find the cause of what's going on for you and then talk about what your next best steps are to start working towards helping your body get back into balance so you can get better health and go from there. So if you have any questions, reach out. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you got some value from this, and I will talk to you soon.